The first image is a gap between two wet bone blades. Dark water pushes through it, small glowing prey matter trembles in the pressure, caught for a moment between the curved ribs. Then the gap widens, the whole fan snaps open. A headless body fills the flooded shaft. Where a torso should be, there is only a vertical spread of living bone, combs curved rib blades, pale and wet, opening like a giant filter in the cold blue water. There is no face above them. No mouth, no throat. No stomach waiting behind the chest. The ribs are the feeding organ. Pressure surges upward through the shaft, bubbles rise in slow columns, suspended biological cables bend in the current. The alien does not chase, bite, or swallow. It anchors itself with two heavy stumps at the bottom of the shaft, and lets the water become part of its body. The rib fan opens wider. Prey fluid and small organisms rush toward the glowing gaps. Some strike the outer blades and scatter. Some pass through. The living bone surfaces brighten where matter touches them. Every narrow gap becomes a feeding line. Every rib is both a filter and an absorbing surface. Nutrients do not travel to a gut, they enter the exposed bone itself, spreading through wet pressure channels hidden under the pale ridges. The rest of the creature does not move. It has no head to turn. No eyes to follow prey, no mouth to close around anything. Its whole body is built around the moment when water forces life through bone. A cluster of suspended prey, matter drifts too close to the fan. The shaft pressure tightens. Cold light flickers along the walls. The bone comb strainer leans forward by only a few degrees, and the current does the rest. The prey is pushed against the fan. The rib blades flex. They do not break it with teeth, they sort it. The larger fragments flatten against the outer comb. Smaller bodies slide into the glowing gaps and vanish through the wet rib channels. The feeding is slow, mechanical, and alive. The monster does not swallow prey whole. It converts pressure into filtration. This is why the creature can live only here, in open air. The rib fan would fail without liquid pressure. The bone combs would dry and lock shut, without water forcing matter through the narrow openings. The exposed feeding surfaces would receive nothing. The walls concentrate flow. The suspended cables trap drifting organisms. The cold blue side light reveals the pressure distortion around each rib gap. The rising bubbles show how strongly the water is being pulled through the fan. The creature opens again. This time, the rib blades spread wider than before, turning the whole torso into a pale circular comb. For a moment, the headless body looks almost ceremonial, like a fan of bones displayed in darkness. Then the pressure current hits. The ribs shudder. Glowing matter is dragged through the gaps in bright threads. The surfaces of the bone combs pulse as they absorb pressure and nutrients together. The anchor stumps tighten against the shaft floor. The creature remains upright, unmoving except for the rib fan. A problem begins near the left side of the fan. One rib blade does not open fully. It sticks halfway, curved inward, narrowing one section of the comb. Prey matter collects against it. The flow stutters. Bubbles spiral around the jammed blade instead of rising straight. The strainer cannot turn its head to inspect the failure. It has no head. Instead, the entire fan adjusts. Neighboring ribs open wider, trying to redistribute the pressure. The glow shifts away from the jammed section and spreads toward the right side. For a moment, the system stabilizes. Then the shaft surges. A heavy pulse of water rushes upward from below. Suspended cables whip sideways. Prey matter is pushed hard into the fan. The jammed rib locks tighter. The creature's body finally reacts. Both anchor stumps grind into the shaft floor. The lower tissues swell, holding the animal in place. A deep glow travels from the bottom of the fan upward into the jammed blade. The rib is living bone, not dead structure. It can receive pressure. It can feel blockage. it can change its shape. The jammed blade trembles, the surrounding gaps flare bright. Monster opens the rest of the fan dangerously wide, letting the water pressure bypass the failed section for several seconds. Feeding becomes uneven. One side of the fan glows with frantic filtration, the other side stays dark, locked, overloaded. The creature is at risk. If too many blades lock, the whole fan closes. If the whole fan closes, it cannot feed. If the fan stays closed too long, the exposed comb surfaces dry into rigid ridges, and the feeder becomes a sealed headless column, alive, but starving in the one place built to feed it. The pressure surge peaks, the jammed rib snaps open, not with a crack, but with a wet release. A cloud of trapped prey matter shoots through the newly opened gap. The rib surface ignites with cold blue glow. The whole fan rebalances. Bubbles rise straight again. The suspended cables settle into slow movement. The strainer resumes feeding. Now the action becomes rhythmic. Open, pressure, strain, absorb, close halfway, open again. Each cycle pulls another veil of living matter through the rib fan. The creature never swallows. It never turns. It never shows a face because there is no face to show. The horror is the torso itself, ribs that are not protection, but appetite. The final cycle begins as the shaft current weakens, the bubbles slow, prey matter thins. The glowing gaps dim one by one, the fan stays open longer than before, searching the water for anything left to strain. Only a few particles pass through the bone. Combs absorb them quietly, then the rib blades close. Water drips from every curve, the fan folds inward until the headless body becomes narrow again, a vertical shape locked between the pressure walls. Two heavy anchor stumps hold it in place. Pale ribs lie sealed where a chest should have been. For a moment, nothing moves except slow bubbles rising past the closed comb. Then, a faint glow travels once across the sealed fan. The creature is still hungry, but without pressure. Even a monster built from feeding ribs must wait.